Welcome to another educational piece that I'm doing. Today's video is on the moon. As I skipped it last week, I am covering it this week. Today's video is about lunar intelligence, white light, sacred symbolism, and again, contemplative intention. Today I want to present another careful synthesis of astronomy, optics, contemplative psychology, religious symbolism, and Western esoteric tradition through the figure of the moon, with specific attention to the lunar intelligence rendered in occult sources, as, bear with me for this enunciation as it is quite long, Malka Belthar Saitim Hid Barua Shehakain, and the lunar spirit Shad Barshimoth Sharthathang and Chasmadai. I'm not making these stuff up. This is in a lot of occult grimoires and planetary magic manuals. These are the names of these things. Whether I'm pronouncing them right or not, the intention still remains the same. I could be messing it up, but the energies itself know that I am directing my attention and focus on them. I'm going to be talking about the numerology of the moon's magic square, the symbolism of white light, and the larger question of how faith, attention, and inner guidance can create a meaningful bridge between physical reality and sacred interpretation. Now, the moon in astronomy does not generate its own visible light. What we call moonlight is sunlight reflected from the lunar surface, and only about 1/10 of the sunlight that hits the moon is reflected back into space. And that single fact, science already gives us a profound symbolic key here. The moon is not the source of visible radiance in the way that the sun is, but the vessel, reflector, modulator, and shaper of borrowed light. That physical reality maps remarkably well onto the moon's religious and occult symbolism across all cultures, where it governs reflection, tides, cycles, dreaming, memory, rhythm, fertility, and our emotions, and the unstable but meaningful forms through which light becomes intimate. In Western esoteric tradition, especially in later Agrippan and magical calendar lineages, the moon is given a more complex hierarchy of names than several classical planets. In that stream of occult theology, the lunar intelligence is commonly rendered as Malkai Belthar Saitim Hed Aberua Shechakaim, while Shad Bar Shemoth Sharthathang and Chasmadai appear as lunar spirit names in later ritual and sigil traditions. This would be linked directly to more sigillic magic and candle magic rather than, focus and metaphysical practices. I like to incorporate all of them. As part of sigillic magic, you like to focus on, picture and visualize that sigil in your head. Some people burn them, some people throw them in the toilet, they throw them through the water, whatever. However you consecrate said sigil, that is where the focus and attention is going to be. I walk around with it 24/7. I am constantly on the meta in my mind, in my own theoretical AR created multiverse that I use inside my own psyche. Now, these are not scientific categories, of course, but symbolic and devotional ones. The intelligence represents ordering, harmonizing, receptive, and benevolent aspects of the lunar current, while the spirits represent the more immediate, operational, and potentially unrulier side of the lunar forces. A careful reader should understand these names historically and theologically, not as terms from physics, though. Still, they are useful because they preserve an old insight. The moon is not only calm intuition and soft reflection, it is also fluctuation, enchantment, instability, impressionability, and tidal motion, and the strange susceptibility of the human soul of phases, environments, and emotional weather. In the traditional planetary Kamea system, the moon is associated with the 9x9 magical square, using the numbers 1 through 81. Each row, column, and major diagonal sum to 3, 6, 9. This is where lunar phases also come into manifestations. This is where 369 comes into Tesla's theory. This is where 369 comes into bringing fifth dimension into the fourth with our mind and manifesting it into the third dimension in our physical reality. Now, the total sum of the whole square is going to be 3,321. That's going to be 333. It's always going to equal 9. So the sum of the moon is going to be a 9x9x9999, which also numerologically means, end of a cycle, bringing into a new change, into a new beginning. Now, numerologically, this is significant because the moon square is the largest of the 7 classical planetary squares, suggesting breadth, multiplicity, reflection, fluidity, and the multiplication of states. If the sun's square can be imagined as concentrated radiance, the moon's square is better imagined as distributed occurrences: cycle, repetition, memory, response, and the many chambers through which light is actually filtered. The ninefold form also carries long-standing symbolic association with completion, gestation, return, and the threshold between concealment and our manifestations. In occult practice, this numerical architecture is not merely decorative. It encodes the belief that the moon's flux is not random, but itself patterned. If we now turn to color, specific precision here is going to matter. White, which I usually correlate with the color of the moon, I like to contrast for black and white, bring it in the energies of Saturn mixed with the lunar phases for completion, karmic, dharmic cycles. It's kind of like a dualistic property where one brings in new, it's kind of like the full energy going into, how do I want to word this? The full energy going into like Empress energy. It's just two opposing energies that the polarities just flow together. So I like to contrast white and black. Primarily I use white, gray, and if I'm doing a more classical, ceremonial magical practice based performance, if you will, I'm going to use orange as a contrast to white, because orange has a significant meaning to me for that color variation. I digress. Now, white is the color of the moon, and this is symbolic. This is symbolically appropriate, but in optics, white is not a single wavelength. White light is perceived when the visible wavelengths are combined or broadly reflected together. It's a combination of all of the above to bring one. The moon also represents bringing the hidden into light and exposing what can survive in darkness. Also, if we are combining all of the colors on the spectrum, all of our manifestations on the alternate planetary energies, we are also going to use the lunar phases to contrast those spectral colors to draw in our manifestations through the lunar phases into our physical reality. It all has to do with manifestation. Now, white light is perceived when the visible wavelengths are combined or broadly reflected together. By contrast, visible light as a whole spans roughly 380 to 700 nanometers. Therefore, when one speaks of channeling the angstrom of the white spectrum, one is speaking symbolically rather than literally. Because white does not have one single angstrom value in the way a monochromatic color does, a more accurate scientific statement would be the lunar white meditation recruits the perceptual effects of broad spectrum visible light, or the mental image thereof, rather than a single isolated frequency. The distinction strengthens the practice instead of weakening it. It allows us to stay honest that white, in physics, is a perceptually integration of multiple visible wavelengths, while in spirituality becomes an emblem of purity, receptivity, luminous emptiness, reflection, and totality. The moon is therefore well represented by white, not because the moon emits a unique white ray on its own, but because the moon is experienced by human perception as the quiet reflector of the full visible field, subdued through distance and night. Again, when we distance that attachment to something that we are wanting, we incorporate the law of attraction. When we incorporate the field of the night effect, that is the shadow side of the night, the dark shade of the soul, when we're going through the shadow work within ourselves, with our inner work, these things also integrate through a wide spectral variety of colors channeled from alternate energies, bring it into everything that we are using and working on to become a better version of ourselves in the lunar and planetary practices, when we're utilizing our colors to alter our reality in real time by changing our input, which therefore changes and alters our output. Again, I am, therefore I am. I think, therefore I think, therefore I am. I am that I am. If I am a piece of shit, or I am incapable of doing this, I am. If I am abundant and I am radiant, I am. Words don't matter, because the words are just words. They're frequencies that attach to those words through emotional integration with a certain color that is also reflected in a psychological aspect within our psyche that draws off of those frequencies as well. So our input is going to directly affect our output, if that makes sense. Now, this is going to naturally lead into meditation. A lunar meditation using white light or white visualizations can be described in two languages simultaneously. In scientific language, the practitioner narrows attention and reduces competing sensory input and recruits visual imagery or illumination, and enters a state in which mood, expectancy, and self-observation become more structured. In spiritual language, the practitioner aligns with lunar intelligence through stillness, receptivity, memory, intuition, and prayer here. The strongest scientific claim available is not that white light opens a measurable channel to named lunar spirits, but that meditation can meaningfully affect attention, emotional regulation, and stress-related processes while also carrying some risk of adverse experiences in certain people. Those are people that usually have more inner work to do if they're experiencing the adverse effects of meditation and silence. You need to be able to sit in silence in order to separate your thoughts and organize your own inner mechanisms, if you will. A computer doesn't simply exist by operating in noise. It is in a structured script in which all applications can be modified, be executed, and operate efficiently. It might be a bunch of noise individually, but like collectively it operates in a very organized, specific pattern. It separates said tasks one by one, and it runs on the most efficient level possible. Same thing with the brain. You apply that construct to the brain mentality and how we think and how we need to be. It does actually compute to one and the same. There's no difference, realistically. It's just an analogy that applies across the board. That means the honest position is this, is the contemplative mechanism is real as psychology and embodied practice. The interpretation of that state as communion with Melkai Bar Shaitin, Shad Bar Shemoth Sharthaitin, or Chasmadai belongs to religious and esoteric worldview. Faith is going to give it meaning. Science is describing the process. This is why I like to bridge the two. It's like an omni-scientific perspective. It is all one and the same. You can't have science without religion. Religion doesn't simply exist without the science because they each describe each other in different language and different verbiage. It's like if I speak English and somebody speaks Spanish and we say the same sentence, we're saying the same thing but in different languages, from different perspectives, in different bodies. It's one and the same though. It's the same exact phrase, the same exact root, the same information, just conveyed in different ways. One explains the other explains the other. It is a, dualistic thing here, if you understand what I'm saying. Now, the phrase quantum lattice field I'm going to use, it's going to be treated here with the same care as previously mentioned in other videos. In modern physics, to reiterate, quantum field theory describes the underlying fields whose excitations appear as particles. It does not establish that consciousness can scientifically dial into lunar intelligences by selecting color frequencies. So if we use the language of a quantum lattice field here, we should use it as a disciplined metaphor rather than a laboratory claim, obviously. In that metaphor, reality is experienced as an interconnected matrix of information and response. Faith acts as a carrier wave of the commitment. Focus is going to act as the tuning mechanism. Repetition is going to stabilize the signal. Emotion is going to supply the amplitude here. Symbol is going to give it its structure. Inner guidance is going to interpret our output. And the model is not accepted physics in the strict sense, but it is an elegant contemplative framework. It allows us to understand why rituals often feel responsive to practitioners and when they're receiving information, when they're getting them intuitive downloads, if you will. This is because other things are in line. The lattice allows for that operational communication from external sources to flow freely within thyself. Not because the electromagnetic spectrum has been experimentally shown to contain deity-specific channels, but because human attention, symbol, expectation, memory, and spiritual conviction can produce highly ordered states of consciousness in which insight feels received rather than invented. Now, if we place that into an input-output model and analogous to computer control systems, the picture becomes even clearer. Sorry. Get some water. Now, a darkened room, lunar timing, prayer, breath regulation, names or sigils associated with the moon, and a conscious aim such as emotional clarity, healing, purification, dream receptivity, or cyclical understanding. The processing layer is going to include attentional narrowing, emotional memory, symbolic association, interceptive awareness, expectation, and ethical reflection. The output may include calm, intuitive insight, stronger emotional attunement, greater sensitivity to cycles, deepened dream life, or a more honest relationship to grief, dependence, longing, and change. Not everybody is receptive to change, but change is the only thing guaranteed. It's not life or death, because those are just constructs. We understand that we are alive, but nobody can actually define what being alive is or what death actually is, intrinsic to its root nature. Change is the only guarantee in life. We change in age, change in height, change in personality, change in relationships, change in talent, change in growth, change in occupation. Change is the only true guarantee in life. It's not death. It's not this. It's a change. Death is a change. It's a change of consciousness. You are no longer here. You're somewhere. But until actual human language can specifically narrate the actual intrinsic root of what death truly is, I don't accept that as an actual construct, because there's no valid dictation of what truly it is. It's like, I don't believe in death. It's just a transmutational of energies, because energy cannot die. Energy just changes states. It's like if I take water and put it in the freezer, it's still water. I mean, we know it's ice, but its intrinsic root is still water. If we let it melt, it's going to have vapors, it's going to have condensation. It's the only constant in life, as we term it. Now, the feedback loop, again, is behavioral and moral here. Journaling, improved self-regulation, wiser emotional choices, more truthful relationships, and a greater capacity to distinguish intuition from compulsion. If no moral fruit follows the practice, then one may have generated atmosphere without wisdom, as before, as continuing on any planetary energy you're going to be working with. If you're just generating noise, you're just loud for no reason, you're basically a fart. You're just there. You stink, you're inconvenient, there's no wisdom. You are just a fart, to put it as simply as possibly can. You are a fart. Now, whether one calls the result lunar psychology or lunar grace depends on one's metaphysical language, I apologize. Not on whether the transformation is meaningful, but whether if it's ascending. You need to ascend in these energies, not digress, stop showering and, don't wear deodorant and call yourself a spiritual guru because you know how to eat a burrito backwards, because the color purple, number 7, is like, tied to your shoe. It's just a thing that you know how to do by accident because, you might have early onset dementia. These are things that you actually need to embody and actually preach what you practice without validation, without being seen, without appeasing the crowd. Do it no matter who's around, what's around, or whether you're seen or unseen. These are part of being your most authentic self. Are you a fart? Are you authentically being you? Most people are farts because they don't know how to be themselves, because they're so stuck in appeasing the crowd that they lose track of not being a fart and being themselves because they're feeling weird about being weird. I like my weirdos. Those are my people. Now, the gods and goddesses associated with the moon across tradition support this dual vision. Selene, who's one of my favorites, it is my daughter's middle name for a reason. Artemis, Hecate, Diana, Luna, Thoth in his lunar intellectual form, and many other deities across cultures embody different dimensions of lunar forces. Virginity and wildness, hunt and cycle, crossroads and magic, intuition and timekeeping, tide and fertility, writing and measurement, mourning and return. Now, in Hindu tradition, Chandra carries the theme of mind, rhythm, emotion, and nectar. In Mesopotamian religion, Sin or Nana expresses royal or calendrical lunar order. These figures differ theologically, but their convergence is striking. The moon is repeatedly linked not only with softness and beauty, but with governance and time, menstruation, gestation, memory, thresholds, necromancy, crossroads, tides, dreams, and the unstable border between guidance and glamour. Lunar force is therefore not morally simplistic, it nurtures, but it also enchants. You got to be careful of that. It heals, but it also destabilizes if one is ungrounded. It reveals the hidden, but not always in linear form. Most things are non-linear, and that's one thing that a lot of people have trouble comprehending. Time, though linear physically, metaphysically is not linear. You can collapse timelines that are non-compliant to the highest self in non-linear order if you know how to navigate quantumly. Some might say I'm crazy, but some of the smartest people on the planet right now will invoke the fact that quantum leaping and quantum space in correlation to our perceptual reality is directly linked. So am I going to believe the ones that just don't want to do the inner work, or believe some of the greatest minds to exist? I mean, I don't give a fuck about people's opinions, but I might want to listen to the people that know a thing or two about physical reality and, simple comprehension. Now, that is why lunar energies have both pros and cons when viewed through a karmic and dharmic cycle, as most planets do, as most of this flows through a dualism standpoint, a plus and a minus, which is the basis of most organic life and chemistry and physics entirely. Every push has a pull, so it's always there. On a beneficial side, the moon supports sensitivity, intuition, adaptability, maternal core and care, reflection, imagination, empathy, dream work, receptivity, and capacity to feel one's way through change. It allows the soul to remember, to grieve, to gestate, and to synchronize with deeper things and timings. On the difficult side, though, lunar force can manifest as mood instability, over-identification with emotion, passivity, projection, dependency, illusion, nostalgia, cycles of fear, and the temptation to confuse psychic impression with spiritual truth. In karmic terms, the moon often exposes what we repeat emotionally without understanding. In dharmic terms, it teaches us how to feel without drowning ourselves. Like, it's okay to be happy, it's okay to, shill yourself and feel good about yourself without technically being a narcissist or self-indulgent. What's the word called when you're full of yourself? Egotistical. You can love yourself and feel good about yourself without listening to the classification of being egotistical or ego-driven. Now, that does have a excess tipping point where we capitulate, at which point we become egotistical because we are so self-indulged. We are unaware of our surroundings. That's a problem. Now, it teaches us how to receive without dissolving, how to honor change without worshiping instability. This is where the season of Job metaphor often becomes helpful, as it does in my other videos. Lunar seasons may feel like loss, exile, unanswered weeping, or long night of not knowing. It's like a period of stagnation or quietness. Yet the same lunar season can also prepare the abundant harvest by teaching receptivity, humility, patience, and emotional honesty. The harvest of the moon is rarely an immediate triumph, almost never, because there's always something to learn that we overlooked at. We think by our human comprehension of lessons and teachings in life that we're missing the overall higher meaning of the lesson, teachings in life, because we are limited in our views, because everything needs to have a label, because most people don't comprehend the unknown just for being the unknown. It is what it is, because it is what it is, without needing to know why it is what it is. Unless you're at that point, then there's always going to be something to learn. Always. No matter what. It is ripened wisdom, restored tenderness, deeper intuition, and the ability to carry reflected light faithfully through darkness. This is also why white is the correct contemplative color for the moon in symbolic terms. Even if physics reminds us that white is not a single wavelength, white in lunar practice can be understood as a visual analog of total reflection held in gentleness. It is everything combined to one. It is all of the lessons combined into one. It is all of the perceptions and energies combined into one. Now, when we combine them into one, we can be positive or negative, as above, so below. No matter what, you're going to be on one end of the spectrum. There is no medium ground. There's not. You can be as above while comprehending the below, or you be below while comprehending the below. It just depends on how you use that information and navigate the world. It's okay to fuck around minimally, but you're always going to find out minimally. If you fuck around maximally, you're going to find out maximally. It just depends on what you do. It's balance. That's why they say mediation. Like people that want to cut back on drinking, instead of drinking a full 6-pack, they'll drink 4. Balance. To them, that's balance. In their reality, that works. We might not understand that there's only 2 less of a 6-pack, but to them, that's less. It's an achievement because it's tapered down. It's more balanced. Now, it is not the overwhelming central radiance of the sun. It is the softened field, the gathered spectrum, the visible fullness made bearable to human perception by distance, phase, and night. In practical meditation, one might sit in low light, visualize a white or silver disc, breathe slowly, and treat the white field not as proof of occult science, but as a disciplined focal image. And this is the thing. When I wear my colors, like it intrigues a lot of people because to convey the fact that I'm using quantum physics as a means to link me directly to my divinity, to be close to God, to channel these energies so I can balance myself and spread the positivity that I'm like transmutating on an alchemical level. It's hard to simplify that without overwording it or getting too excited about it, which only leaves more questions than answers, because then people want to know more about it. I basically could probably start my own religion if I really wanted to. But I'm still following the highest God. I'm not worshiping devils. I'm not, worshiping demons. I work with demons. I'm going to work with the energies of the devil because it brings me closer to God. It makes me a better person because I understand the lesser energies for what they are and incorporate them into my life to elevate myself as a better human, to move forward. Forward momentum and ascension is the idea. Evolution, as I've stated multiple times in previous videos, is the only way to go moving forward. In my perception. I mean, you can choose to do whatever you want to do. You want to stay being an asshole, that's fine. It's planetarily, it's not a good cycle to do so. That's, if you're going to stay thick-headed and stay stubborn, and it's right now it's the car. It's definitely not forever in your core. Faith then personalizes the practice. Focus is going to stabilize it. Inner guidance is going to interpret what arises. If the practitioner invokes the lunar intelligence, the aim may be emotional healing, safe passage, dream clarity, and reconciliation with cycles. If the spirits are included in the esoteric imagination, they should be approached with theological seriousness rather than just curiosity. Don't ever say something doesn't exist because it just might. Because most people don't even know what, subatomic particles are. We know they're there. We can't see that they exist. We don't acknowledge that they exist. It's like God and gravity, 2 separate different ideas, but respect and validation of existence is going to get you further than disrespect and devalidating the possibility thereof, because physics will teach you that anything is possible. I mean, the fact that we're here alive is possible. The statistical probability of your existence in your life, of you being that sperm to incubate the egg, is substantially higher than hitting the Powerball 100 times in a row. You have a higher chance of winning the Powerball jackpot 100 times concurrently than actually being existing in live right now. So keep that for your thoughts next time you think you can't do something or something isn't in your favor. The statistical probability of your existence is substantially higher than you winning the lottery jackpot 100 times concurrent to the previous one. So consider that for probability and increase your amplitudinal abundance in perception if you think something isn't possible. It is. It doesn't matter what it is, because the quantum field don't rely on human, constructs or back-end deals or friendships. It just is. It's a benevolent energy that can become malevolent very fast if you don't respect it accordingly. Now, in that sense, the moon's planetary magic is not going to be about fantasy escape, but about learning how reflected light works in our soul. The moon teaches that not all authority is central, not all illumination is direct, and not all power arrives as command. Some power arrives as timing, memory, tide, receptivity, and the ability to mirror without distorting. Some healing is lunar precisely because it does not force clarity before the psyche is ready to bear it. Some truths can only be perceived in phases, small increments. It's like a puzzle. You can't have the whole puzzle at once because that would ruin the fun and the learning experience while doing it and building it to get the bigger picture. Science tells us that moonlight is reflected sunlight. Religion and esotericism tell us that reflected light is not lesser light, but in a different kind of ministry. It enters where direct brilliance would be overwhelming. It governs the tides of body and psyche, and it teaches that the hidden life is still a life under law. What law? Quantum law. God's law. One and the same. What the synthesis ultimately proposes is that physics, religion, and esoteric symbolism need not cancel one another. Physics explains the moon as a body reflecting sunlight and white light as a broad visible composite rather than a single wavelength. Psychology explains the meditation, mood, visual focus, and the shaping of awareness through symbolic recognition and repetition in correlation to our inner psyche. Religion and occult theology explain why the moon continues to function as one of humanity's deepest images of soul, memory, rhythm, dream, grief, receptivity, and sacred return. The names Melkai, Barthai, Saithim, Hed Barua, Shechakaim, Shad, Barshimoth, Sharthain, and Chasmadai belong to that symbolic universe. And whether one interprets them as literal beings, ritual interfaces, or personifications of subtle states, the practice lesson remains the same. The moon is a school of reflection. It teaches us that what is borrowed may still be holy. It's kind of like a mirror. You definitely don't want to mirror someone else's energy because that'll be illuminated at some point. Because some energy might be holy and some might be tainted. Regardless, that which changes may still obey law, that white radiance may still emerge from darkness, and that the quietest lights are sometimes the ones that guide us most faithfully through the longest nights. That's all I have for you guys. This is the reason why I did this the following week, is because I figured the moon was going to be a more lengthy video because of the aspects it actually contains. It contains such a direct correlation to psychological perception in terms of phases as people go through. It's like, if you ever want to expose something, use the moon. Because, like the lunar phases, all things repeat in cycles, no matter what. It's like murderers. They always return to the crime. People that are manic bipolar always return to the crazy. And, sick obsession usually returns to that level. All things have a cycle. It doesn't matter how long in between, there is a patterned cycle that we can correlate directly to planetary bodies in direct response to our psychology. It'd be like if I was an investigator and I wanted to do something or expose something, I would want to exit the picture to allow time to expose the phase in which the direct psychological correlation would need to surface from the darkness to show a bigger, lighted version of the story, to light up the details that might not have been previously obvious of something. It'd be like if I had a crazy stalker and I needed them to repeat that cycle, I'd, go disappear and just watch the idiot follow me again to open up that cycle, which would re-implement statute of limitations and, bring up a whole bunch of legal issues. So hopefully we're out there making good choices. I mean, I'm sure we're not, but time tells all. I'll see you in the next one.